Senator.
All right, and then we're looking in this one.
Yes, sir.
Did y'all hear that? When you're up here, you're looking.
In the cell phone.
Yeah.
Let me unmute this. Okay. It's all yours.
All right.
Is that okay?
Yep.
The angle?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for joining us here in person and online. We've just had a vote on the Senate floor. The West Virginia Senate has just officially banned abortion in West Virginia. We're going to go through a little bit of the process that has brought us to this point today, the objections that we raised, what our objections are, and then we'll be happy to take questions in person and online from folks who are joining us virtually. And we've got several other members of the caucus here with us who will speak to their particular positions in a moment. I just want to open up by reminding people of the context and what has brought us to this point. I've lost track of the days, it was about 40 days ago we were called into special session with a couple days notice that we would be dealing with abortion. We were sent home without a resolution after a week. There were two bans that were passed, but they were different bans, and the House and Senate could not reconcile the two. So we were subject to return to the call of the chair. This was supposed to be sent to a conference committee. Again, that was about 40 days ago. We have not heard a word since then. We have not conducted a hearing since then. We've not conducted a committee meeting since then. We have not had any sort of testimony from doctors, medical professionals, or anyone since then. It has been radio silence for 40 days. And then today, after we returned for the fourth special session yesterday, we returned to the third special session and were given a new abortion bill. We saw a draft of that yesterday afternoon. It changed overnight. I received a new draft today and actually changed again while we were on the floor. That passed the Senate just a few moments ago. It is a ban. We objected to that for various reasons, and I'm going to ask my colleagues to come forward and voice their objections to it in their particular areas as to why they think this is bad policy for West Virginia. I mean, what it came down to for me is that we just shouldn't be making these decisions. You know, I have personal beliefs about this. I have religious beliefs about this, but we as politicians should not be making these personal, intimate, private health decisions for people when we don't have any clue what the particular medical circumstances are in each individual case. So first I'd like to invite up Dr. Ron Stollings. He is a practicing physician and is going to talk a little bit about what the medical community and OBGYNs in particular have to say about this legislation and its impact in West Virginia. Dr. Stollings?
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, so we didn't have much time to talk about this, the new version. I was contacted by a couple academic obstetrical gynecologists that work at Marshall and here at CAMC. They still had grave concerns about this because basically we're dictating to them what an emergency is and also basically saying that if they were to do an abortion that wasn't to save the life of the mother or to save an organ system of the mother, that they would be in front of the Board of Medicine, and that there was a statement that actually said their license shall be withdrawn. So they'd no longer be able to practice OBGYN in West Virginia. And of course, that if that happens, you can't go state to state if you've had your license revoked. So my deepest concern about this is our OBGYN workforce. We already are what's called a maternity desert, which means there's not very many people or places you can go and have a baby delivered. So my concern is more about not the person who wants to have an abortion, an elective abortion, but my concern is the family, the new family that wants to have a child and they want good prenatal care. They want good delivery services on the day that the baby comes. And they want good postnatal care. And if they have a problem, they want specialists like fetal maternal specialists there. What I learned from from last night until we voted on it was that these obstetrician gynecologists who, again, teach residents, teach med students, say that it's really going to impact the workforce. People don't want to practice in a state that they're constantly questioned, looking over their shoulder, wondering if this is a bad enough emergency that they should go ahead and do the procedure of choice. So if you're having bleeding, for example, in the first trimester, you present to the emergency room doctor calls down the OBGYN, who we hope is there. There's concerns that OBGYN would not be there. And then they evaluate the patient and decide what the treatment is necessary. And we got in the way of that today by basically saying, this is what an emergency is. We defined it. We, the politicians, not the textbooks of obstetrics and gynecology. And if and again, then we created another cause of action saying basically that the patient or anyone would have can have any other remedy toward a doctor, so they could be sued civilly, etc. We did take out the criminal penalties, which was at one time we were going to send OBGYNs to prison for 3 to 10 years if they got sideways with whatever terms we as politicians put in these bills. There's still a huge angst out there. I hope that someday we'll listen to the specialists. They did not have one opportunity to get in front of a committee and educate we legislators. They went through me, and I tried to deliver their message the best I could. But we did not listen to our specialist about something as intimate as women's health care. So I think it's a scary time, frankly, for the practice of OBGYN. We already have a very old but good obstetrics gynecology folks. About 34% of them are actually over 60 years old. So where are we going to get those new ones to come here? Just when we're getting a lot of new jobs. I think of Sun Park down at the Hobet Project. 200 people going to be there. New Corps up in Ravenswood. And then here we send this bad message about how we're going to treat our doctors who take care of these people moving to West Virginia. Be glad to answer any questions.
Yeah, speaking of the message that this sends, I'll turn it over to Senator Bob Beach next, who gave a floor speech today about the message this sends in light of earlier actions today. Senator Beach.
Thank you, Steve. Well, I too would like to share just a few things real quick, more observations than anything. Today has been a day when we started off on a high note, and we obviously ended on a low note with this abortion ban. This morning, just 3 hours ago, we joined together as Democrats and Republicans to welcome the Berkshire Hathaway Energy Company here to the state of West Virginia. $500 million investment they're making in Ravenswood, Jackson County, which is going to create all kinds of jobs, and there'll be spin-off jobs. And my observation is we come back across the hallway here, and we're passing an abortion ban that does not encourage folks to come to West Virginia, does not encourage young people to come to West Virginia, does not encourage young people to stay here. And part of the comments earlier today during that welcoming speech we had for Berkshire Hathaway was the fact that we were finally crossing that bridge and putting notions of us being a backward kind of state to rest. Well, in fact, no. When we come back across here and pass a piece of legislation like this, it is in fact putting up barriers, and we're still perpetuating that notion that we are a backward state, and that we're not taking into consideration the feelings of our young people and women particularly. And we need to have them, the ability to have those folks have access to health care, reproductive health care, and that's not occurring now. And it's my hope that someday down the road we readdress this. I won't be here in the legislature at that time, but I do hope that it's brought up for consideration again. But I'm a 63-year-old male. To my knowledge, there's nothing on the books that prevents me from doing anything to my body that I want to. And we also know that here in the state of West Virginia, we take on many issues as a legislative body. And sometimes it's water quality, sometimes it's mine production, whatever it may be. And we bring in a host of individuals to testify to those subject matter. This did not occur as we move forward through this process of bringing this bill forward. So again, we continue to perpetuate that backward kind of state that West Virginia doesn't need if we intend to grow. These barriers need to be brought down, and let's encourage folks to come to the state of West Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Beach. So up next, Senator Richard Lindsay is going to talk about why we think the exceptions in this bill are not real exceptions. I think there will be some talk that this was a ban with exceptions. We do not believe that's the case at all based on the particular language in the bill. So Senator Lindsay, you want to talk about this?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Thank you. First, I want to say what I said on the floor that I'm sure everyone in this room has done and I've done. We've talked to a number of our constituents throughout our individual districts. And when this question of reproductive rights is raised with us and we have these discussions with our constituents, we find out that A, they're good people on both sides of the issue of reproductive rights, but also B, that folks don't want to be told what they should do when their personal rights have been violated. And what I mean by that is, folks, if we are going to discuss reproductive rights, there has to be some measure of exceptions for rape and incest. This bill doesn't have it. And I'll remind anyone who's listening, the polling that's been done on reproductive rights in this state here recently by the Chamber of Commerce and another outfit, overwhelmingly the people of West Virginia want exceptions for rape and incest. But I will say again, this bill does not have exceptions for rape and incest. Let me explain that. According to the language of the bill, there's an exception and an allowance for an abortion procedure if the individual has been raped, if they're a minor, and an abortion can take place within 14 weeks of the incident, and an adult at 8 weeks. But here are a couple things. One, you have to have, in order for a provider to provide that type of care, they have to have a report of rape from the authorities in hand before the procedure can take place. And I've spoken to the prosecutors in my district, and that doesn't happen. Those reports aren't made public, they aren't released until a decision has been made whether or not there's going to be a prosecution. And I will tell you, and anyone who's been part of or has been part of the legal process, 8 weeks ain't enough for an adult. 14 weeks isn't enough for a child. So that's the first problem. So there is an exception, but it's a very high standard to meet, and it's a standard and bar that no one will meet under the circumstances. The other problem with not having a broad rape and a broad and reasonable rape and incest exception is that the way this is stated in the bill, because it has to be reported to law enforcement, and I reminded my colleagues on the floor today, according to the U.S. Department of Justice, 65% of rapes go unreported. And then you dig down and you look at the numbers and you kind of figure out why. In West Virginia, 65% of victims are under the age of 18, most of which are 15 years old. And 70% of those incidents take place within the home. So you don't have to walk the world for 45 years like I have to understand that there are reasons why these horrific circumstances aren't reported to the authorities. Because a woman who's violated may be violated by a stepfather or an uncle or a person of power. Maybe they don't want to tell their mother about it. Maybe the mother doesn't want that type of publicity on a particular issue. They don't want anyone to know about their business. And so That's why it goes unreported. So again, we talk about the fact that you have to report to a law enforcement agency. They have to issue a report before you can even get an opportunity to get the care that you want. And I mean, again, there are no, the headline is, while this bill makes out allegedly exceptions, there are no exceptions in the bill. That's not where I am, and that's not where the people of West Virginia are. And I want everyone to remember that and push their candidate or local official on that, because if they're honest, they will tell you that there are no exceptions in the bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator Lindsay. Happy to take questions now. You've got some online? Okay, yeah, if you'll put any questions you have in the chat, then we can do our best to respond to those there. Did you have any in person?
No, I think you answered most of them.
Okay. Okay, sure, no worries. Ben, Latasha, WCHS, any online questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Well, we will put this out on YouTube later, so if folks need to do the replay, you're welcome to get the replay there. Thank you all for taking time to hop on with us and come in person. Thank you. Thank you, Pam.
Yes, sir.